Good evening and welcome to the virtual forum for the Congressional District 4 candidates. I am Evelyn C. Murphy, President of the League of Women Voters of Monmouth County. My pronouns are she and her, and I live in Neptune. The League of Women Voters is a 104-year-old nonprofit, nonpartisan political organization. Membership in the League is open to everyone age 16 or older of any gender who supports our mission to empower voters and defend democracy. Our Monmouth County chapter is the largest in New Jersey, with 372 members, and we invite all of you to consider joining. You can visit our website to learn more. As a nonpartisan organization, we never support or oppose a party or a candidate. A recording of tonight's forum will be available on our website, lwvmonmouth.org, and also on vote411.org, the League's national nonpartisan voter guide. No other recording of the event for any purpose is permitted as agreed to by the candidates. Our trained and experienced moderator for tonight's forum is Sharon Steinhorn. As required by League rules, the moderator lives outside of the voting area. Here is Sharon to introduce the forum and the candidates.
Thank you, Evelyn, and good evening, everyone. Thank you for your interest in learning about the candidates for Congressional District 4. There are 4 candidates running for this position. All have been invited, and 3 of the 4 have agreed to participate here tonight to share their views and respond to your questions. So we're going to welcome Barry Bender from the Green Party, Matthew Jenkins from the Democratic Party, and John Morrison from the Libertarian Party. And the 4th candidate, Chris Smith, the Republican, has not responded to our invitation. And the candidates have agreed to the following format, as well as to the fact, as was mentioned, that this recording must be seen in its entirety. The forum has 3 parts. The first, 2-minute opening statement for each of the candidates, offered in random order, which has been determined before this webinar went online. Second, questions. Voters have submitted questions in advance of the forum. The questions have been screened to avoid redundancy, to ensure relevance to the office, to eliminate personal attacks, and provide a broad range of topics. And each candidate is given the opportunity to respond to every question if he chooses. Responses will be limited to 90 seconds, and we will get in as many questions as possible within about an hour. And then closing statements will be 1 minute, and they will also be offered in random order. And that will be the opportunity for candidates to sum up their positions and the reasons for running. And our timekeeper, Louisa Passer, who will alert the candidates when they have 30 seconds left to show the audience. That's when they have 30 seconds left of the time, and then there will be a stop, right? And they can surely finish the sentence, but I know that they will all respect the sign and stop as quickly as possible. And so we will begin with 2-minute opening with our candidate, Mr. Bender. You are first on the list.
Thank you very much, Sharon. And I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters of Monmouth County for having us here tonight and letting us share our views with the voters, because it's very important to get the message out there. My name's Barry Bender, and I live in Ocean County, a little town you might be familiar with called Forked River. But actually, I grew up in what is now, since they redistrict Congressional District 4, I grew up in a part of Monmouth County called Middletown, a little part of Middletown called Leonardo. So I've basically lived in this congressional district, kind of now the way it is now, for most of my life. I've lived 5 years up in Bergen County and then escaped back out of there, and will never live north of the Raritan River again. Sorry about that. But yes, familiar with Monmouth and Ocean County. I went to school, Middletown High School, when there was only a single high school there. And then when I graduated from Middletown High School, I attended William Patterson College, it was called then, because I think, and I still call it William Patterson College because I think WPC sounds better than WPU. When I graduated from William Patterson, that's when I moved to Bergen County. And 5 years there was enough for me. And I got married and moved down to Atlantic Highlands, which is a lovely town in Monmouth County. Lived there for 30 seconds, a short while, moved to Pennsylvania for 1 year, and then I escaped back to New Jersey, came here to Ocean County, and I've been here, I guess it's 38 years in Forked River, and it's nice here. It's getting a little kind of crowded, but that's something we'll talk about later on. I thank you for having me on tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bender. And second, Mr. Morrison, your opening statements, please.
Right. Good evening, everyone. First off, thank you to the League of Women Voters of Monmouth County for hosting this event. And I want to say thank you to Matthew and Barry for joining us and joining me here. My name is John Morrison, and I'm running to represent New Jersey's 4th Congressional District as a Libertarian. Our nation was founded on the principles of individual liberty, personal responsibility, and limited government. Today, however, we face a government that has overreached its bounds, infringing on our freedoms and stifling opportunity. As your representative, I believe in empowering individuals and families and not bureaucracies. The people of New Jersey need less regulations, lower taxes, and they do not need a government that dictates how we live our lives. But what we do need is more freedom, freedom to make our own choices about healthcare, education, and business, freedom from the crushing national debt that jeopardizes our future generations, and a freedom from an intrusive government that too often violates our privacy. I believe in reducing the size and scope of the federal government, defending our personal liberties, and upholding the Constitution as the framework for a free and prosperous society. I'm not here to serve the interests of big corporations or political elites. I'm here to serve you, the hardworking people of the district, because I know that when individuals are free, we will all thrive. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Morrison. And finally, opening statement, Mr. Jenkins.
Hi, my name is Matt Jenkins. I am running for Congress in New Jersey's Monmouth and Ocean County. First, thank you to the League of Women Voters. I certainly appreciate all the hard work you do and your commitment to the community. Congressman Smith is conspicuous by his absence once again. He does no forums, real interviews, debates, nor town halls. He hasn't done one since, I think, the 90s. I don't know why, after 44 years in office, he did get elected during the Carter administration. You would think that he would want to toot his workings over the past 44 years. Where he and I differ is probably the reason why you're not going to see him being interviewed anyplace. He believes in full government control of the women's reproductive process. He wants no abortion under any cases, not even to protect the woman's health. He wants to criminalize contraception and IVF as we know it, and he has added language to bills to change the definition of rape. He voted against the Fair Pay Act, the Violence Against Women Act, and he voted against the Equal Rights Amendment. I grew up in Toms River in a union family, went to public school, went to Ocean County College, and finished up my studies at Rutgers University with a degree in biochemistry and molecular biology. I live here in Monmouth County. Chris Smith moved his family to Virginia, I think 4 decades ago. Why people keep electing a Virginian to represent them here in New Jersey is a mystery to me. I grew up here. I'm from here. I live here, and I am for here.
Thank you, Mr. Jenkins. Actually, let's start with you since you're
Sure.
ready and able. First question, and again, 90 seconds. What, if anything, should our country do over the long term to ensure quality health care at an affordable cost for all?
We need a public option. The way to get there is difficult. People are used to a certain way, and for political reasons, there's always a lot of pushback. But there are many things that we can do by, following the Affordable Care Act, letting kids stay on their parents' insurance up to 26. But then you have on the other end, I'd like to see people be able to start buying into Medicare at a younger age. It'll bring in younger, healthier people into the system, paying money, and I think it will bolster it that way. Look, if you want private insurance, go ahead. The wealthy will always have better care than everyone else. There's nothing we can do about that. But I do believe that as human beings, as citizens of the richest nation in the world, that we should be providing healthcare, basic healthcare to all of our citizens.
Thank you. Next, Mr. Bender.
Yes. Oh, the same topic?
Same
Well, I
question.
know
You want me to repeat it?
there'll be some disagreement between myself and my friend John there. We're single payer healthcare. And there's a lot of good reasons for single payer healthcare where every person will be covered. There'll be no exceptions to people being covered. And I know one of the complaints that people have in New Jersey is about property taxes. Well, every year in my town, when they raise our taxes, they give us the excuse that it's because the cost of healthcare has gone up for the township employees. If you go with single payer healthcare, you eliminate that cost. Maybe they'll be able to cut our property taxes if we went that route. And also by doing single payer healthcare, small businesses also take the burden off of their shoulders of supplying healthcare for their employees, which allows them to hire more people and spend their money on things that they would much rather spend their money on in expanding their business. So again, single payer healthcare is what we talk about all the time as part of the Green Party. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I should mention that if you ever want me, if anybody wants me to repeat a question, please feel free to just, shout it out. Mr. Morrison, same question.
Yes. So I think the way I feel we go about healthcare in this country revolves around deregulation. I think just with excessive government regulations, it will do nothing but drive up healthcare costs. So if we support kind of a free market approach and remove these federal regulations, I think it does nothing but promote innovation and competition, which could, and I think will, lower prices and also overall care. I do think that the patient choice is a very big part of my platform. I think individuals should have the freedom to choose, their own healthcare providers, their services, whatever their insurance plans are. And when it comes to basically, as I said, deregulation, I think the way to go about it is ending really a lot of government programs. So removing them or phasing them out, things like Medicare, Medicaid, and the Affordable Care Act, I think kind of distort the healthcare market and that increase costs for everyone.
Okay, thank you. The next question, we'll start with Mr. Morrison. What steps would you support to curb gun violence in our country?
So this is actually, as a libertarian, I think the usual response is, I think a lot of people will think that I'm going to scream the Second Amendment right now. And when it comes to gun rights and guns in general, I tend to be a lot more moderate. I'm a school teacher. I've been a public school teacher for 12 years. And you bring up public schools, and obviously one of the big topics people talk about is gun violence, because that unfortunately is happening more than we'd like it to. I do support the Second Amendment. I understand and I totally get a person's right to protect their property and their family. But I think as a society, we should be better at supporting some reasonable regulations. So that might be more into background checks, and maybe waiting periods in between purchasing firearms, I think is very, very important as a society as well. But I would like to somehow incentivize safe gun ownership. Not making anything mandatory, but I think there should be an incentive to go into gun safety trainings as much as you possibly can, to installing things like a gun safe in your house. I think you're naive to think that gun violence isn't a problem in this country. And I'm not a libertarian who's going to sit here and scream the Second Amendment at you and, think that everybody should be owning a firearm. I think there's reasonable ways about it. And I think that as a society, we should do better in terms of our gun violence.
Thank you. Next, Mr. Jenkins.
After my last run, I immersed myself in gun culture. I realized that I didn't know very much about it and wanted to learn. So I went through the process of getting permitted. The first thing that happens is for a long rifle. I do not own one, but that's how the first one is. You can get an assault style rifle. It's the easiest one to get. Next becomes a handgun. And after that, here in New Jersey, you have a concealed carry license. I do own a gun. I do have a concealed carry license. Talking to gun owners and gun enthusiasts, there is a lot of common ground that we can find for people to get gun safety. They do not want guns in the hands of people who are inexperienced or who simply should not have guns. Safe storage. If you have children in the house, there is no reason why you don't have a safe for that gun. Basic background checks. There's no reason why someone who has a history of mental illness, violence in their background, they should not have a gun. And most gun Second Amendment enthusiasts will tell you the same thing. I think there is a lot of common ground. It gets difficult when people start talking about banning assault weapons. If you go to everytown.org, there's been 200 plus deaths since the assault weapon ban was reneged back in the 2004, I believe, but 500,000 gun deaths. And I'm worried about the 500,000 before I focus on the assault weapons.
Thank you. Okay, moving on. Big topics. And the next question, we'll start with Mr. Bender, and here it is. What actions would you take to address the threats facing the United States due
Bender,
to
would you like to tackle the gun question?
climate change? Oh,
Yeah,
Mr. Bender
I'm
did.
with you. I'm different than both of the other gentlemen here. I think there's no reason for people to have assault rifles. I'll say that.
Did I forget Mr. Bender?
Yeah, well, I didn't answer that one, but I can jump in.
I apologize.
No problem, no problem.
I
Yeah,
apologize.
I'm different
Thank you,
than
Mr.
both of
Jenkins.
these gents. I think there's no reason to have a live assault weapon. To me, if you're a hunter or you like shooting targets or whatever, there are plenty of other types of guns that can be used for that. To me, the only reason to own an assault rifle is for violence, is the way I feel, and that's my personal feeling. So yeah, I would be pushing against people owning assault rifles completely, because we've seen too much of it, and I know people are killed, as you said, Matt, from other handguns too. We've had things in Ocean County, situations like that, but the assault weapons make a lot more people go a lot more faster, and my feeling is there's no need for people to own them.
Thank you. I apologize. There are just so
No,
many
no
good
problem.
questions. I'm just excited to get through them. But let's start with Mr. Bender with the next question. And again, what actions would you take to address the threats facing the United States due to climate change?
Well, I see it firsthand where I live here. There's a street that runs out into Barnegat Bay here in Forked River called Beach Boulevard. And probably 5-7 years ago, there was probably 20-30 yards of ground between the homes, because there are some homes that are right on the bay. And now every time there's even a moderate rainstorm, they're having water splashing up against the sliding glass doors at the back of their homes. So it's coming. We see it. I mean, you can deny where it's coming from if you'd like, but it's coming. The water's rising, the global warming, and it's a result of the global warming. I think the deadlines that are being set for cutting down on the carbon emissions are too far out. I think we need to take more drastic measures and make them sooner, making these deadlines a lot sooner, because it may be too late by the time we reach these deadlines and they cut down on the carbon emissions. And that, to me, that's where it's coming from. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Jenkins.
Sure. The threat is not just to the earth, it's actually to our economy and to our energy independence. Climate change is real. It is happening. And I believe when it comes to energy, we should be looking at all of the above. It's not about banning or getting rid of anything. What I want to do is relieve us of this addiction and keeping us prisoner of fossil fuels. You know, people complain about gas prices going up, but those same people are fighting against renewable sources. We have dangers around the globe that would be lessened if there was less dependence on oil. If you look at Russia with Putin, he is a gas station attendant. Without the high price of oil, he would not be able to adjudicate a war in Ukraine. I am for wind. I am for solar. I am for nuclear. There is so much technology out there going on right now. We have something called a gravity battery in Texas being built. I won't go into what it is, but it's fantastic technology. And we need to be moving as fast as we can in that direction. And these things produce jobs, massive amounts of jobs, which is great for the economy.
Thank you. Mr. Morrison.
Yes, I think most people will agree that climate change is absolutely real. But I guess our approaches could somewhat be different, but it is a crisis. That's why they call it climate crisis. But I find myself just skeptical of any type of government intervention into it. I think that we've seen no amount of money that we throw at what is a global crisis, we haven't really got anywhere else. That's why I think that we have to rely and we have to push and incentivize our demand for clean energy. That's the only way we're going to get away from things that are destroying the environment. And I think that lies in the free market. So if we push these kind of free market environmentalism, you're going to find much more innovation. You'll find private enterprise can solve some environmental issues, I think, far more effectively than government regulation can. But we're going to need, like I said, it's going to have to be, I think, on the reliance of the private citizen who can really make the difference on a mass scale. I just call me a skeptic, but I don't think that the more we involve our government in combating this, the less will actually get done. And I think it's on all of us really to use what we have and really embrace this free market environmentalism and demand that we have more clean energy resources and things that we can use other than fossil fuels.
Thank you. That really gives you a chance to go a little, the next question gives you a chance to go into that a little more depth, because the question is, what measures would you support to reduce the U.S. dependence on fossil fuels? Let's get specific, and we'll start with Mr. Jenkins.
Sure. All of the above. Like I said before, there's some great technologies coming out, whether it's wind on the water, wind on the land, solar over all our parking lots, on all our buildings, and nuclear power is our future. Our military is electrifying. They are working on small nuclear reactors so that they can repower and refuel in the field. We have climbing electricity demands. AI takes massive amounts of energy. All of our homes, we want more energy. The more internet processes going on, we need more energy. So the idea that we're going to get that all from fossil fuels is, it just doesn't make any sense. When will they run out? We don't really know, but they will run out. And we need to be working on these things now before we start to run into difficulty. So my energy program is all of the above.
Thank you. Mr. Morrison?
Yes, I couldn't agree more. I think that an all of the above approach is the way to go. I think that the energy market itself and not the government should be kind of driving these energy sources and making them thrive. We have, and sorry to repeat you, Matthew, but we do have these clean energy sources like solar, wind, geothermal, things like that can be way more competitive, I think, amongst themselves than traditional fossil fuels are. And I'm sorry I keep repeating myself. I don't think that government mandates requiring things like this. I think it has to start with the individual. We have to drive this market up, and we have to see that it is something that can easily be transitioned into. And it really does start with us to find these innovations and prove that they work and that they are these renewable sources of energy and not become so reliant on what we've been using. I think that's the only way forward.
Thank you. Mr. Bender.
Yeah, I'm a little different on this one also. First of all, I think a big part of controlling fossil fuel is getting money out of political campaigns, because in my opinion, the fossil fuel industry basically controls a lot of our government. And by raising gas prices and destroying the economy via raising gas prices, they can elect or unelect presidents, et cetera. They have too much power. To disagree with Matt, I live a mile from a nuclear power plant. And when they invented a nuclear reactor that doesn't leave waste that's going to be there for 200 generations, I'll be for nuclear power. But right now, I live a mile from Oyster Creek Nuclear Generating Station. They're powering it down. They're decommissioning the plant, but those spent fuel rods will be there and they'll be radioactive. I can't tell you how many generations they'll be radioactive. So wind, solar, new technology with batteries, as Matt was saying, the batteries have to be improved, and I know they've been improved in the electric cars. But along the same lines, mandating everyone owning an electric car does nothing for you as long as the power is still being generated by coal-fired or by gas-fired, et cetera. You're not really gaining anything as far as I'm concerned. So that's where I stand on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question, totally different subject. And we will start with Mr. Morrison. Actually, you're a teacher. You might have something to say about this. New Jersey has one of the highest number of segregated schools in the nation. What should the federal government do to provide an equitable, quality public education for all children pre-K through 12?
Well, speaking from, my I'll say 8 to 3 job, listen, I'm a product of the public school system. I teach in the public school system. There is an incredible value in public education. Speaking of the disparities between districts, it can be absolutely substantial. And that's why I see this firsthand, and we're holding district to district to the same exact standards. We hold states to the same standards, and it doesn't work. So it's when you get these discrepancies and you get the demographics that you do in certain districts and you get the test scores that you do, I don't truly believe that that's a proper showing of what public education is. I think that the less we have that as teachers that we're told to stick to is really hindering our education system. But in terms of the desegregation and the issue that we do have in New Jersey, there's something that we can promote, which is school choice and vouchers, where we can have parents, if they're not happy with the public school system in their district or their town, they do have that option to send their children elsewhere. That is something that I would absolutely promote.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Jenkins, same question.
Sure. I myself am also a product of public education, K through 12 in Toms River. I will first start with a disagreement. No vouchers. We need to fund public school, not defund public school. Here in where I live in Monmouth County, our high schools are of one district, and the students can apply for different programs in the different schools. Law and public service happens to be a big one over here in Colts Neck. You have biological science school, communication schools. So the kids do have a choice on finding the place that's best for them, but they still stay within the public school system. I am against vouchers. They end up too often in the hands of the wealthy who are already sending their kids to private school. I think public school needs to be funded. It is a community service. And yeah, that's just the way that I would keep going, like fund schools. And we are looking to consolidate some of these districts out there. I think we have over 600 of them here just in New Jersey. They will not become massive districts, but some districts literally have one school. That's an assistant principal and a principal and a superintendent, and that definitely can be consolidated to save costs.
Thank you. Mr. Bender?
Yeah, no, I agree that public schools are vitally important. But I always go along the lines that education really starts in the home. If you have a good environment in the home and parents promote teaching, it's that much easier for teachers like John when the students come in and they're excited and interested in being educated. So there has to be some way to stress to families more. And actually, in the economy now, it makes it very, very difficult because when I was growing up, which was a long time ago, you had a parent in the home at all times. Now you have two parents working a lot in many households just to make ends meet, and that contributes, as far as I'm concerned, a lot to the lack of focus on education when there's no one in the home to promote. So I don't have a hard and fast answer to how you do that in the home, but I think that's where it has to start. And again, public education is the most important.
Thank you. Next question. What about student debt? What relief, if any, would you offer to individuals who have already accumulated large amounts of such debt? And what actions would you take to continue to encourage students' involvement in higher education, but to minimize the accumulation of future student debt? Mr. Jenkins.
Sure. For anyone who's been to a large university lately, you will see one thing: construction everywhere. And the only people who do construction are people who have lots and lots of extra money that they don't know what to do about it. School is too much money. Look, if you want to go to a private institution, good for you, spend the money. But I believe state institutions, the prices should be coming way, way down. We need to make school more affordable. I do agree with the student debt relief, but I would have done it in the opposite direction. I would have tried to cure the problem before I started giving out money like that. But, for these people who are getting relief, we need to look at who exactly they are. Some of them are people who were ripped off by predatory institutions that no longer exist. So now you've spent all this money on college that's absolutely worthless. You have people out there who, under policies that were actually put forth by George Bush, and if you make college your payments for 10 years and you're a public servant, your loans were supposed to be adjudicated, and that was not happening. So that's just something that President Biden re-implemented, but it already existed. And the people who are having their loans forgiven, these are people, most of it make $75,000 and below. And for me, that's what my tax money should be for, helping families.
Thank you. Mr. Bender.
Yeah, I'm on board for that one. I'll probably be working till I'm 70 years old to pay off my parent loan for my daughter. She went to a school out of state, and I'm glad that she went, and I was happy I could do it for her. But I'll give you an example. When I went to school, and I'll tell you the year, 1975, I went to William Patterson College, and a credit was $22. If you look at what school, yeah, it's pretty hysterical. I mean, if you look at what schools cost now, it's unbelievable. I mean, my daughter got scholarships and she got, various help, and still the amount of debt. And it was the only school that she wanted to go to that had her major. So that basically kind of focused us in on that. But I agree with Matt that if they can work out that you can go to school, let's put it this way. I'm hoping that our country is not moving in a direction where only the extremely rich will be able to go to college. That would be a nightmare. Okay. And we have to fight really hard against that.
Thank you. And Mr. Morrison.
Yeah. And, I think at the root of when it comes to student loans lies in, that personal responsibility that, you should carefully assess, look at the costs and the benefits of a higher education. I mean, we have all had higher education. There's incredible benefit to it. But to take on that amount of debt, it is something you really need to sit down and assess that cost and the benefit you're going to get from it. In terms of the student loan forgiveness. I think that it's unfairly kind of shifting that burden of that debt repayment onto the taxpayer, and it will in turn create moral hazard where borrowers are going to potentially take on more and more debt that they can't repay, and they will assume that the government's just going to eventually forgive their loans, and that's something that can't be that slippery slope that we're on, because like I said, it's the shift of that burden really shouldn't go to the taxpayer when the individual was the one to take that loan out. It's just something that needs to start with the person who's taking that loan out, and you should be responsible for paying that back.
Thank you. Next question, we're going to start with Mr. Bender. What is your stance on access to abortion? What federal actions do you support?
I think that it's a individual's right with their doctor as to whatever they do with their body. I think a lot of the conversation that goes on this topic has to do with people asserting their own religious beliefs on other people as to how things work and what's life and what's not life, etc. And I think it needs to be up to the individual family, person, and doctor to make those decisions. It's not the government's place to say, no, you can't do that. To me, that is a total invasion of an individual's rights to be an individual person. So I'll just leave it at that.
Okay, Mr. Jenkins, same question.
Sure. This is between a woman and her healthcare provider, period. The government needs to mind their own damn business. Oftentimes I hear people like, well, people should be more responsible with themselves. But what about the woman who's hoping to have a baby soon, and she's 8 months pregnant, finds herself in absolute agony and bleeding out, gets rushed to an emergency room, and the hospital says, sorry, can't help you. Like, this is what's happening across the country. Now, sometimes if you're lucky, they're being airlifted to a free state where they're able to get the care that they need. Take a look at, we've seen the individual cases that you see on the news, and people see like, okay, it happens here, it happens there. But in the states, just where these extreme bans are, you're looking at over 65,000 women who are pregnant due to rape. They should not have to carry their rapist child. In some states, rapists are actually getting legal visitation rights to their child. I can't imagine what that does for women. Like I said earlier, this is where me and Chris Smith are 100% opposed. He wants an absolute iron grip of the government on a woman's reproductive life, and I say mind your own damn business.
Thank you. Mr. Morrison.
Yeah, I'll do my best to basically paraphrase what Matthew and Barry just said, not in a negative way. I think we're all in agreement on this topic. We get asked this a lot, like running for office. This is my second time running for office, and people always ask, like, what's your stance on abortion? And to be honest, that's not the question that you should be asking. The question is exactly that. What is the federal government's role in abortion? We're all human beings. Of course, we have a stance on abortion, but that really, my opinion, does not matter into what somebody's choosing to do in their own private life. What we do have, and what Matthew just said, is that we have a congressman right now that wants to do, stands by this one size fits all solution. And we can't have the government dictating morality. That's not their job. So honestly, what Barry just said is what I agree with, is that is a decision between a woman and her healthcare provider, period. That should have nothing to do with the government and their say at all. We're not in this business in morality. We're in this business to make practical solutions. And that is something that somebody can make in their own personal life.
So let me ask the second part of that question again. You seem all in agreement, but what federal action would you support? Can we get a little more specific, Mr. Bender?
Yeah, well, I think at some point, it might have been during the Obama administration, where there was a Democratic majority where they had the opportunity to do something about it and not leave it in the hands of radicals that are being put on the Supreme Court, who swore that they were not going to overturn Roe v. Wade and then go ahead and went ahead and did it anyway. So if the opportunity arises again, they need to grab the opportunity and do what they need to do and get it done. And I'd be part of that in DC. I'd be part of that for sure.
Thank you. Mr. Jenkins, what federal actions do you support?
Yes, we are going to have our first woman president. We need a Senate and a Congress that can get the work done. And when that bill comes along, I want to make sure that I'm there to sign it, not just to protect a woman's right to choose, but to guarantee that right in the United States Constitution.
Thank you. Mr. Morrison.
Yeah, that's in terms of the federal government's role, it is something that again is between somebody and their healthcare provider. So that has to fall under, some our basic human rights to begin with. And on a federal level, it is something that does need to be protected because again, that is somebody's personal liberty and their personal freedom to choose that decision in their life, and that especially a healthcare decision needs to be protected.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. All right, next question. New Jerseyans are concerned about the economy and inflation. What actions and legislation, if any, do you think the federal government should be taking to alleviate these concerns? And let's start with Mr. Jenkins.
Sure. First, to everybody out there, you vote for the person who fixed the economy, not for the person who broke it. I know a lot of people are upset about inflation and they ask me about it, but what they really care about are prices. There are a few things that we can do because there's no magic wand to lower all prices everywhere. But the first thing we can do is reinstate the SALT deduction. That is something that has hurt people here in New Jersey. The Trump tax cuts actually raised taxes on 10% of New Jerseyans, and people with home-based businesses have all told me that this has hit them really, really hard. Groceries, that's a big one that people ask me about. When you go into a grocery store, there are tens of thousands of products, and you think, wow, I have so many choices. There are only a few companies that make almost all of them. Yes, you have choices in what you want to eat, but you don't have choices in who you buy it from. They like to say that they need to raise prices because of inflation or because of supply chains. But when companies are making hundreds of billions of dollars in profit, they are not raising the price because of inflation. They are raising it from price gouging. So we need to attack this consolidation and reintroduce competition back into the marketplace.
Thank you. Mr. Morrison.
Yeah, so the birth of the Libertarian Party basically came out of the fact that we went off the gold standard. How you solve inflation or how you come close to solving inflation is you abolish the Federal Reserve. This is an institution that's printing money. They're setting artificially low interest rates, and that's contributing to this inflation because we are printing money at a faster pace than our goods and services are growing as well. Our currency is so devalued, and that will lead to higher prices. I mean, we have had people on the record say that we can never go bankrupt because we can just continuously print money. We have nothing backing this money, so it doesn't take economist to realize that if you keep printing this much money and you keep flooding the market with it, it's going to devalue it when it has absolutely nothing backing it. So when we have things like the Federal Reserve and other institutes of central banking, they are absolutely guilty in where our inflation is now, and that's somewhere that we have to look more into.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Bender.
Yeah, no, I'm going to disagree slightly with John because my feeling is if there's goods and services there that the money can be spent on, then I think the money should be printed. But again, I'm going to go back to something I said before. Every time I see gas prices go up, the cost of shipping product goes up with it. And yeah, maybe those few companies that do produce the food, they are stuffing their pockets really well. But again, they use the excuse that it costs us more to ship the product. And again, the fossil fuel industry, when they raise the prices, for argument's sake, they raise the prices far enough, Usually the finger gets pointed at the president of the United States saying, hey, look what he's doing to the economy. Our gas prices are horrible, etc. And again, I'll repeat, it gives too much power into the hands of an industry that already has, as far as I'm concerned, a stranglehold on our government, and that needs to end.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next question. Where am I? What about immigration and asylum seekers? What short and long-term actions are needed to improve our current laws regarding immigration and asylum? Mr. Morrison, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say and hard to ignore that our immigration system is broken. But as a country, we need immigration. That's how ideas, people, commerce move freely from place to place. Like that's not something we can just stop. We have people coming into this country that are just seeking, as cliche as it is, they're seeking a better life from where they were. We have millions of those people, but we also have people that are coming in with criminal or nefarious intentions coming into this country. And if they're all getting lumped into one group together, it's hard to differentiate. Our ports of entry need to be much stricter. We need these places guarded. We can't be at the numbers that we're at right now because it creates these talking points that we saw in the debate the other night. And I'm not even going to quote it, but it brings these things up and gets to such a heated level when it is something that is needed in this country in terms of, like I said before, the moving of people, of cultures, of commerce, of these markets. That we need that in this country, but it seems at times to be an absolute like free flow, and we can't have places these kind of sanctuary cities because you're incentivizing people to break the law and come into this country illegally. That is something that has to stop. We're going to continuously see these numbers and we're going to continuously see these problems.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Bender? Same question.
Yeah, well, I agree with John that the system is broken, but I think the entire immigration system needs to be improved so people aren't stuck out of the country. And I'll just, I say this a lot. If there wasn't a better life here, okay, and there weren't problems in their own countries, maybe generated by the United States, maybe not, okay, they wouldn't be coming here if they were happy where they were living. Okay, so they come here for a better life. People give them housing and people give them jobs here. Okay. And I'll tell you, I live in an extremely red county, and some of those people that are giving housing and jobs are elected officials here in Ocean County. All right. So don't talk out of this side and out of this side when you're talking about immigration. I think I would say the largest majority, maybe 90% of the people who I see who are immigrants here in Ocean County come and they work very hard and they earn their money and they raise their families and they're good citizens. So this whole talk about they're all criminals and rapists and murderers, I think is a lot of nonsense to stir people up and spread what I call their lies, as far as I'm concerned.
Thank you. Mr. Jenkins?
Sure. In the short term, we have Republican Senator James Langford has a border bill. I would pass it immediately. It is a bill that was killed by Donald Trump because it would have helped the country and therefore made Joe Biden look good. And he wanted to have the chaos because, as we've seen, attacking immigration is the beginning, middle, and end of his entire campaign right now. It would do so much. First off, it would allow President Biden or the president, whoever it is, to shut the border down when the numbers get too large. We have about 700 judges trying to adjudicate millions of cases, and it would have bolstered that. It would have added more security to the border. It would have done a lot to get us to the place that we really are trying to get to. Pulling back on the longer term, to me, there are two parts of immigration. You have the people who are here and the people who want to come here. The people who want to come here are going to become the people who are here. So we need to deal with the people who are here first. The DACA recipients, I would make them citizens immediately. After that, people fall into different categories. Now, maybe there are some people who can never have citizenship and need to be removed from the country. But then you have other people who've been here a lot of years and they contribute to society. I would like to see some type of legal residency for them, maybe not citizenship, but legal residency. So therefore we can let those people come out of the dark and we can start to turn the lights on and not allow people to come here legally and live off the grid.
Thank you. Okay, next question, moving along. And this one will start with Mr. Bender. What do you believe needs to be done to restore the trust and confidence in our Supreme Court?
Oh, my goodness.
Hmm.
Wow, that's a good one. I was just thinking when we were talking before, we talk about the Supreme Court. Well, just prior to the Civil War, the Supreme Court made rulings that African slaves were not human beings, and they, were only what was it, the 3/5 or whatever. I forget my history might be off, but the Supreme Court's not perfect, and my feeling is, especially with things that are going on now, the balance between the three branches of government is a critical thing. And when that starts to fall to the wayside, our democracy falls to the wayside. So we have to be really careful that the people on the Supreme Court have to be held to the same standards as everyone else. And personally, my personal opinion, lifetime appointment to anything is not the correct way. I would change that. But then again, that would take a constitutional amendment to change something like that.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Jenkins.
Number one, term limits. Number two, we need some type of enforceable ethics policy. The Supreme Court absolutely must be held to a higher standard. We need to be able to trust that they're doing what is in the best interest of the United States and not their own personal agenda. This is something in my whole entire life, I always held them to the highest esteem. And what we've seen is like they are literally bought and sold. What is going on with Clarence Thomas is an absolute abomination. Abomination is here. He is in outer space someplace. He is absolutely owned by the billionaire class. I could go through the list of all day of all the money and the vacations and the trips and the motor coaches and his mother's house being purchased. It's just unbelievable. So they need to be held to a higher standard. Term limits, absolutely, and enforceable ethics policy.
Thank you. And lastly, Mr. Morrison.
Yeah, I don't think you'll find a libertarian that won't yell term limits as well. So I am in complete agreement of that. To have a lifetime position is something that's so antiquated and makes absolutely no sense to me. And then it becomes a position that could be politically weaponized by whoever happens to be in the White House at the time, when we have so few that seem to be stepping down before their time. Honestly, in hindsight, nothing against her, but Ruth Bader Ginsburg was the second woman ever on the Supreme Court. When President Obama was in office, she should have retired, and she didn't. And unfortunately, that cost them, the Democrats, a more liberal seat in the Supreme Court. It is something that, without a term limit, why wouldn't you just wait as long as you possibly can to stay on that seat? And then, unfortunately, when those things do happen, since it is a lifetime position, that is a seat that now becomes usable in a political spectrum, when really they are the highest court in the land, and now it has become probably the most political seat, when they're supposed to be the eyes of fairness and justice. So yeah, it starts with term limits. That cannot continue to be a lifetime position.
Thank you. Thank you. Next question. What is the appropriate U.S. role in preventing the spread of authoritarian regimes? What is the role of the U.S., do you think, in preventing authoritarian regimes? And we'll start with Mr. Bender.
Oh, that's a good one too. I'll just say right off the bat, war's not the answer. There needs to be conversation. There needs to be talk. There's been, as far as I'm concerned, way too much rush to war and killing and dropping bombs, etc. You know, and I'll go to one of my points. What's going on in Gaza is an abomination, as far as I'm concerned. So, well, my opinion, what's going on in Israel is that's an authoritarian government there. So I'll just say that right off the bat. But again, if you are the leader of the world, okay, you have the ability with these countries to enforce that they back off of their authoritarian wars and killing and death. And that would be the role of the United States. I mean, the United Nations is in this country. And as far as I'm concerned, what's going on with Gaza and the United States stepping in and stopping anything that the United Nations want to do, as far as I'm concerned, is absolutely backwards and upside down from what we're supposed to be doing. So, to me, that's the way. War's not the answer, and people need to sit down and talk, because really, in the long run, if you take away the governments, we're all the same people.
Okay, Mr. Morrison, same question.
Yeah, if you look at an expanded view of the political spectrum, you'll see that authoritarian and libertarian are complete opposites from each other, right? So authoritarian governments at my core as a libertarian make me sick, but I'm also a non-interventionist, and as harsh as it might be, and I'm reminded of this every day when I have this conversation, is that as a country we're in too deep, and the expectation is we're just going to help everybody. At the end of the day, another country around the world, as harsh as this sounds, that's not our problem. And I know that it could become our problem, but as a non-interventionist, I think, as Barry said, the jump to war and the jump to assist in wars around the world cannot be our policy, because, like I said, people could laugh at me all they want. I know that we are in multiple locations right now. We are in way too deep, and the expectation is the United States is going to solve everybody else's problems. And that does come down to the burden of our taxpayers, because we're the ones that are footing this bill. Authoritarian governments are something that I can never, ever get behind. I hate, to see groups of people being oppressed like that in a government that is of that size and of that power. But again, as a non-interventionist, I think our best approach is to stay out of things.
Okay. And Mr. Jenkins.
First and foremost, our battle against authoritarianism starts right here in the United States. This is what Republicans are pushing for. You can look at Project 2025, and I know Trump is trying to distance himself from it, but before he distanced himself, he was bragging about it. And Project 2025 is nothing new. This is something that was floated by the Heritage Foundation under Ronald Reagan. And they said it themselves: we don't care who the president is. He just needs a working right arm to sign the legislation that we put in front of him. The whole purpose of it is to build an authoritarian government, get rid of the Department of Energy and the Department of Education, so there are less cabinet members, there are less checks and balances, and all the power gets funneled up to one person who can just make the rules as they see fit. So the first thing we need to do is get out and vote and make sure that we stop authoritarianism right here in our own country. We should do it by example. There are times we need to intervene, like with something like Ukraine, because if Putin gets through Ukraine, he's going to Poland, and because of NATO, we will be in a war. Right now, all the money that is seen to be being sent to Ukraine, most of that money is spent right here in the United States. We are sending our old weapons over to Ukraine, and then through American manufacturing, we are taking that money and building new weapons and rebuilding our arsenal. And we have committed no boots to that war. So Putin needs to be stopped. But generally, I think we should be leading by example.
Thank you. Okay, we're coming down to the end. We've got a couple more questions. Here's let's say the second to the last. And we'll start with Mr. Morrison. Do you think the government is doing enough to help veterans? What other programs do you think might be needed?
I don't think we're ever doing enough to help our veterans. That I know that's something that Congressman Smith prides himself on, but you can show me the most perfect piece of legislation that will help every single vet, and I'll tell you that it's not enough. These are men and women who are doing things that the vast majority of us are not doing. And at times that's completely putting their life on the line, and they deserve to come home and have whatever they want and have anything taken care of. And we owe it to them for doing what we could not do. So again, you can show me any piece of legislation that helps veterans. I'll tell you that it's not enough.
Okay. Mr. Bender?
Yeah, I think going back in our history, you go back to the Revolutionary War, and there were veterans there who felt that they were owed more than they were, and obviously they were. You go to the Civil War. I remember there was a march on Washington by Civil War veterans. This country has never supported veterans the way they should be supported, because if it wasn't for the veterans, I firmly believe we wouldn't be sitting here talking right now. Okay, so we owe them a debt of gratitude that can never be repaid, and whatever they need for what they've been through, they deserve to get, as far as I'm concerned.
Thank you. Mr. Jenkins?
Sure. My father's a Vietnam vet, and every generation before him has veterans in it. My father has always bragged about the care that he's received from the VA. He said he's always been treated very well. That model and whatever's happening at that VA needs to be spread right across the entire country, because as everyone has said so far, we do not take care of our veterans, and there's no excuse for it. When the PAC Act came up, Republicans voted against it. They said it just cost too much. We cannot brag about having the most powerful military in the world when we have homeless veterans. The last I read, I think there are 22 veterans a day that are committing suicide. Without them, none of us are here, and we need to be doing everything we can to make sure that our veterans are taken care of when they come home.
Thank you. All right, this is the last question, and I'm not sure I understand the question, but I'll let you each take it as you see. It's an interesting subject, and we'll start with Mr. Bender. How would you balance First Amendment rights with other issues, including racism, homophobia, and anti-Semitism? How would you balance first and, okay, got it?
Yeah, I have it.
Okay.
Actually, I was just watching, and I have friends who are involved. I don't know if people are familiar with the Uhuru 3, but they were being accused because they spoke out, gave their opinion on subjects. They were accused of being Russian agents. They were in court in Tampa being charged as Russian agents. They were found not guilty of that. They were found guilty of some kind of conspiracy thing that's going to be challenged. But First Amendment rights are, I mean, that's what makes us free. If you have to be afraid to say what you feel and what you think, then you might as well stay in bed and not come out, as far as I'm concerned. But again, there are certain things that you can't do, like, for instance, screaming fire in a crowded theater. And along the same lines, these things that were mentioned in that question, I think would fall into the same kind of area as screaming fire in a crowded theater. Okay. So, there are limits to free speech as far as I'm concerned. Is if it does harm to other people, then it's not free speech. That's how I feel.
Thank you. Mr. Jenkins.
Sure. Right now you hear from Republicans that their free speech is being stifled. They look to their new favorite, Elon Musk, the EV guy. They hate EVs, but they love Elon Musk for some reason, because he says he's going to restore free speech. Well, the free speech that they want to make sure gets out over the airways is their propaganda. Any speech, as we just heard, you can't yell fire in a theater, but you also cannot incite violence, and you cannot lie in the public square in order to incite violence. We watched what happened on January 6th. Trump the other day says, what? I was hired to come in and give a speech. What do I know about anything else? We know exactly what happened. We know exactly what he did. He has spent years complaining about everything is rigged. When he lost his Emmy, it was rigged. When he lost the election, it was rigged. When he lost the popular vote, it was rigged. When he lost the House, it was rigged. When he lost the Senate, it was rigged. Everything's always rigged. And now he's saying if he loses this one, it's going to be rigged. How many people's lives were destroyed on January 6th because they showed up at the Capitol at his request? And these are their words. And recently he went on TV and admitted twice that he lost. Now suddenly he's backtracked it. So there is plenty of free speech out there. And yes, we can argue at different times, but mostly you cannot push hate, you cannot push racism, and no, you cannot yell fire in a crowded theater.
Thank you. Mr. Morrison?
Yeah, I think our First Amendment rights, which aren't just free speech, we also have the right, freedom of religion and freedom of assembly, all covered in the First Amendment. To kind of, I guess, somewhat echo it, it's you have this ability as a human being to hear something you might not like or hear something you might not agree with, and you don't have to let it process. You have this great ability to ignore it. And if we continue on this path of attempting to limit free speech or attempting what people hear and don't hear, I think we're going to end up just hearing one thing. We have so much information out there. I believe in the individual to determine what they're hearing and what they interpret it as. And I also, I think, as you guys said, I think a direct call to violence and is a clear infringement on somebody's rights. If somebody has what we consider, an offensive opinion, it is what it is. I can't change somebody's opinions and I can't change somebody's stances, but I have the ability to either not listen to it or just disagree. And we get too caught up into trying to correct somebody into the way that we're thinking, and they're trying to do the same thing. And we're never going to get anywhere if we continue to do that. So I don't see a place that free speech should ever be limited. I think that will only limit our information and the things that we hear.
Thank you. Okay, gentlemen, thank you for taking all these questions up, and it is time for you to, I think you have just 1 minute to close and try to convince the viewers that you should be elected to the Congressional District 4. And so we will start with Mr. Bender.
All righty. Well, as mentioned in the beginning of the program, I am the Green Party candidate for Congressional District 4 in the House. The Green Party takes no money from corporations. It takes no money from special interests, and it takes no money from PACs. We are beholden only to the people of this country. This year in New Jersey, we have a congressional candidate in each of the 12 districts, plus a candidate for Senate. So wherever you are in New Jersey, you have the ability to vote for a Green candidate. We have a lot of issues. One thing I want to mention is this state is horrible, and probably there's other states too, on mass transportation. That is something I would address right away when I get to DC. Mass transportation, if you live in Ocean County and you're a senior and they take your license away, if you don't have somebody nearby, you starve. So that has to be improved. That's got to be a top priority also. And I thank you once again for having us here tonight. I'm happy to be with these two gentlemen. We had really good, exchange here, and thanks to both of you guys also.
Thank you, Mr. Bender. And let's go to Mr. Morrison.
Yeah, so before we leave tonight, I'd like to just paint a scenario for you all to imagine yourself in. You wake up one morning and you find yourself in just terrible aches and pains, and you go to the doctor, and the doctor tells you there's a few things that I think will work to get rid of your aches and pains, but I'm going to suggest that you either take a red pill or a blue pill. So you take the red pill, and not only do your symptoms not go away, they actually get worse. So you go back to the doctor and you say, you know what, I'm going to try the blue pill this time. And the same exact thing happens. Now, would you go back to the doctor and say, maybe can I try one of those other options? Because it seems like if I try with this red or this blue pill, it's only getting worse. I think you should. You have more than two options. Please believe that. Again, thank you to LWV, and thank you to Matthew and Barry. This is obviously a dream come true, is running for office, and to have discourse like this is still, it's absolutely a dream come true. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Morrison. And Mr. Jenkins. your closing statement.
Yes, thank you. My name is Matthew Jenkins, and I'm running for Congress in New Jersey's 4th District, which encompasses Monmouth and Ocean County. Thank you, League of Women Voters, and thank you, Barry and John, for having a conversation like adults, something that does not happen too often these days. The difference between me and my main opponent there, Chris Smith, he wants a government iron grip on women's reproductive health. No abortion at any time, even to protect a woman's health, criminalize contraception, get rid of IVF as we know it, and he has added language to bills to change the definition of rape. I believe that this is between a woman and her healthcare provider. I have plans for immigration, as you've heard, ideas for the economy, but if we lose our fundamental rights, they are not coming back in any of our lifetimes. So please think about that when you get out and vote this fall.
Thank you. And I just want to say a huge thank you to these 3 serious candidates tonight for participating in this informative forum. And thank you to you, our audience out there, for wanting to be informed voters. I'll remind you that this forum has been recorded and will be posted on our league website, lwvmonmouth.org. And it will also be on Vote 411, which is our league online voter guide. And a reminder that this recording can be shared, and it must be shared in its entirety. And if you would stay with us for another minute, to the audience, we have a few words about voting in this upcoming election, which is why we're here. In order to vote, you must be registered by Tuesday, October 15th. And for registration information and forms, visit vote.nj.gov. And there are 3 ways for registered voters to vote. First, you can vote by mail. To receive a vote by mail ballot, follow the instructions at vote.nj.gov. Cast your ballot by mailing it, by placing it in a drop box in your county, or by delivering it to the Board of Elections in your county. You can vote early. Cast your ballot using a voting machine at any early voting site in your county during the 9-day early voting period, starting Saturday, October 26th through Sunday, November 3rd. Choose a time that's convenient for you. And of course, in person on Election Day, Tuesday, November 5th. Cast your ballot using a voting machine at your assigned local polling site. Polls are open on Election Day from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. And lastly, again, for information on any voting question, visit vote.nj.gov. And again, thank you for being here, and good night.